Hi everyone, it's Nicole, and today I'm bringing you a recommendations video. So in an attempt to do more sit-down videos on my channel, I'm attempting to start a new series called Who Picked These Recs, where I come to you with recommendations for different genres and tropes within romance. I mean, we don't even really have to keep it at romance. We can do, whatever genre or trope that you would like, because I am asking you guys if you want to put anything in the comments about which genre or trope you would like me to recommend books to you for. Please do that. I'm just starting with romantic suspense for this video because romantic suspense is actually one of my favorite subgenres within romance, but I do really appreciate your suggestions about which trope or genre you would like to see recommendations from me. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and get started. This first author I'm going to talk about is probably going to sound familiar because I do talk about her a lot on my channel, and that's Sandra Brown. The first book from Sandra Brown is probably going to sound familiar too, and that's Chill Factor. I do talk about Chill Factor a lot on my channel. If I've made you a recommendations list in the past, it probably has Chill Factor on there. So in this book, our main character, her name is Lily. She is getting a divorce from her husband, and the setting scene of the book is them packing up their mountainside cabin together. During the packing, they end up having an argument, and he decides to go down the mountain first. He urges her to follow quickly just because there is a really bad snowstorm going on right now. So she says she will, and she eventually does follow, but the storm has gotten progressively worse. And then as she's driving down the mountain, a figure darts in front of her car, and she has to swerve to avoid hitting him. But she does end up clipping him like in the hip, and she runs off the road and into a tree. And that's how we meet our second main protagonist. His name is Tierney. Turns out that they had met each other in the past. It was just like an afternoon where they had a rafting trip. And so it was surprising that he's on this mountain and, they know each other. He figures out that the car is not drivable at all, and there's no way that they can make it down this mountain on foot, especially with the snowstorm. So they decide to head back to her cabin to take shelter there. And even on top of all of that going on, there is also a serial killer on the loose abducting women. This killer has really confounded the police because they really can't find any kind of connection between the women. They're different ages, different races, different hair colors, anything. They can't really find any similarities between these women that are being taken, except at the place of their abduction, there is left a blue ribbon. So the alias that they give the serial killer is Blue. While Lily and Tierney are in this cabin, he doesn't really want to tell Lily why he was on the mountain, in the middle of a snowstorm hiking, and he acts very strange whenever she does ask questions that he's trying to kind of put distance between them that way. So she really soon begins to wonder if she can even trust him and who really he is, especially with the serial killer on the loose. So some tropes we see in this book is the forced proximity trope. We have the only one bed trope, and where they have to kind of lay together to share body heat. The next book I want to recommend by this author is Play Dirty. This one is a little bit weird, but bear with me. In this book, our main character, his name is Griff. He is a former quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. He was just released from prison because he was caught accepting bribes for losing games. Recently released from prison, no really job prospects. He's kind of like the black sheep. No one really wants to hire him anyway. So his job prospects are very low. Our other main characters, their names are Laura and Foster. They are a married couple, and Foster was in a car accident that has left him paralyzed from the waist down. Laura blames herself for that, and especially it's created tension because they have always wanted children, and now that Foster is paralyzed, there's no way that he can actually perform. So that does create some tension in the household between Laura and Foster, but really Foster will do anything so Laura can have children. And so that's how they meet. Laura and Foster invite Griff. It's sort of like a business proposal. Foster wants Griff to be a sperm donor so they can have their children. But the weird part that comes in is that he doesn't want them to do it artificially. He doesn't want to do the artificial insemination. He wants them to actually do the deed. I know. Bear with me. So as they're going through the motions of trying to conceive a child, Griff obviously gets closer to Laura. Laura tries to create as much distance between them as possible because even though she has agreed to this, she is very uncomfortable. And as they learn more and more about each other, feelings end up developing. But soon there's a murder, and it seems that Laura's in danger, but the conspiracy of the murder and what is going on seems to be closer to home than any of them realize. So the trope for this book is basically a bad boy trope. We have Griff, who seems to be a morally gray character. And the last book I want to recommend by this author is called Mirror Image. This is probably the one that's most dated on this list because it was published in 1990. But in this book, our main character, her name is Avery Daniels, and she's an investigative reporter. She is traveling to Dallas for basically known for her as a scoop of a lifetime. And the plane she's on doesn't even make it off the runway. It crashes and does set on fire, and so she's hospitalized from that. When she wakes up, she can't communicate. She has a lot of burns covering her body, and I believe she had broken her jaw, so they have her mouth screwed shut, so she can't communicate at all. But in the chaos of the crash and her coming to the hospital, she is actually mistaken for the wife of a senatorial candidate, Tate Rutledge. Everyone thinks she's this wife. They want to get her going into plastic surgery so she can get rid of the scars and everything. And so she's actually trying to communicate that she is not who they think she is, and she's going to go into plastic surgery, and they're going to make her look even more like this guy's wife. And she's obviously freaking out, but she has no way to communicate that. While she's recovering, she actually gets a visitor from someone. She doesn't know who it is. All she hears is this voice. She cannot see him, saying that he's going to kill Tate. So hearing that, there's got to be a story here. Her reporter instincts kind of kick in, and she kind of plays along at this point, wanting to know why someone wants to kill Tate and kind of get to the bottom of it. So she goes to kind of play along as this guy's wife. And as she's doing that, she realizes that Tate and the relationship between him and his wife is very estranged. And it turns out to get closer to him is harder than she realized that it was going to be. As the story progresses and she gets closer to Tate, and from Tate's point of view, there seems to be a lot of differences in his wife. She's actually very loving, especially towards their daughter. And he just can't help but fall in love again with his wife, especially when the life or death situations seem to be happening and they just get closer and closer together. So one of the tropes in this book is mistaken identity. The next series that I want to talk about is the Fortress Defense series by Julianne Lindsay. This is from the Harlequin intrigue line, so it's a category romance. The first book is called Deadly Cover-Up, and in this book our main character, her name is Violet. She has a daughter, and she hears news that her grandmother has suffered a tragic accident and she's comatose in the hospital, so she makes her way back to her hometown. When she gets there, she meets Wyatt, who is our other main protagonist. He was hired by the grandmother to be a protector because the group that he works for, Fortress Defense, specializes in security and protection. Unfortunately, Wyatt doesn't know why he was hired. He was literally going there to talk to her grandmother about what's going on and what his obligations are going to be as a bodyguard. But now that she's comatose, she can't say why he was hired. And so Wyatt and Violet are actually trying to investigate and get to the bottom of everything. Wyatt wants to get as much information as possible, but without tipping off the killer and who actually hurt the grandmother. So in town, while he's asking these questions, he poses as Violet's boyfriend. Soon, their questions and their own investigation kind of put them in the crossfire, and they're in danger and on the run themselves. What I really loved about this book is that Wyatt's interaction with Violet's daughter is very sweet, and he's just instinctively protective of the little girl. I don't know what it is, but a man and a baby, it just makes me swoon. So cute. So there is a fake dating trope in this book. So the next author I want to talk about is Maya Banks. The first series is the KGI series, or the Kelly Group International series. The first book is called The Darkest Hour. In this book, our main character, his name is Ethan, and his wife has been missing and presumed dead for over a year. He is very guilty, very guilt-ridden that he couldn't protect his wife because he is also part of a group, Kelly Group International, who specializes in being a bodyguard and security. And he's also former military, so he puts a lot of pressure on himself to protect his loved ones, and it seems that he has failed in this with his wife. Then one day he gets an anonymous tip that his wife is actually alive. She's just being held captive. So he goes through hell and high water, willing to do everything to rescue her. And when he does eventually rescue her. She doesn't remember him, doesn't remember who she is, doesn't remember that they were married, doesn't remember who kidnapped her or why. So to get to the bottom of this, he is trying to remind her of certain memories to hope kind of trigger the amnesia to go away. But obviously she was held captive for a year. Who knows what she's been through, and that's very traumatic for her. So he kind of has to be sensitive in that regard, but he also wants to get to the bottom of it. Not only just because he wants to know who had kidnapped her, but also to kind of get his wife again. So the tropes we have in this book, it's a military hero. Ethan is definitely an alpha hero as well. And we have the amnesia trope. Next series by Maya Banks is the Slow Burn series. The first book is called Keep Me Safe. In this book, our main character, his name is Caleb, and the setting is that his younger sister has been kidnapped. And when he seems to get no progress, no help from the police, he goes to a very unlikely source for help. And that's when our second main character comes in. Her name is Raimi, and she actually has a psychic ability where she can locate anybody just by holding something that they own. The catch is that it causes her a lot of pain to do this. But of course, she agrees to help because that's just kind of who she is. And Caleb honestly is not taking no for an answer. So she is actually successful in tracking down Caleb's sister, but at a terrible cost. She actually creates a psychic link between herself and the killer. So that puts her in a lot of danger, and she goes on the run. She has to try to stay one step ahead of the killer to keep from being his next victim. Caleb obviously feels very remorseful that she's in this predicament because of him, because he was so pushy towards her and he would do anything to save his sister, and now this innocent woman is in danger herself because of him. So he takes the responsibility to protect her and keep her safe as well. So as they're on the run together and he's protecting her, feelings grow, and that's where the romance comes in. So the tropes we have in this book is we have that paranormal aspect, which is interesting. It kind of gives it kind of a little bit a step above a traditional romantic suspense. And there's also the alpha hero trope as well. The next series that I'm going to talk about is the In Death series by J.D. Robb. The first book is called Naked in Death. In this book, our main protagonist, her name is Eve Dallas. She is a homicide detective in futuristic New York. So the setting of this book is she is on the case of a murder, and the victim is actually a very powerful senator's daughter. While uncovering evidence about the case, she meets a very powerful businessman by the name of Rourke. He is actually a suspect for a while just because he actually owned the gun that was used to kill the senator's daughter. So he is a genius. He's very wealthy and very powerful in his own right. So he uncovers information because he doesn't want to be the scapegoat for this. But how he goes about uncovering that information is not technically legal. So as Eve and Rourke are going through this investigation because he is helping her, obviously feelings are developing, but Eve kind of fights it. She doesn't understand why a man as handsome and powerful and well-connected as Rourke would even look twice at her, but he is drawn to her, and you kind of get his perspective too, so you get a little bit of inside information towards that as well. And he is very persistent. He wants what he wants, and he will not take no for an answer. So like I said, he is very persistent about trying to convince Eve of their relationship and how it would work and to give them a chance. And he is very charming and very swoon worthy. So obviously she gives in. One of the things that really surprised me about this book is that it's not just your typical romantic suspense. It's the futuristic aspect. I believe the year is 2056. I didn't know that going in, so that really kind of increased the enjoyment for me. Trigger warnings in this book: rape is mentioned, and Eve is fighting her own childhood trauma of that as well. So definitely just be careful as you're going into this book for those triggers, rape and child abuse, things like that. So the next thing I want to talk about is romantic suspense books that are on my radar but I haven't read yet. So obviously I want to read the rest of the In Death series. I've only read to book number 5. This is a very established series. I believe book number 52 came out late last year. The next book that's on my radar is Hold Your Breath by Katie Ruggles, and I just want to read the synopsis. In the remote Rocky Mountains, lives depend on the search and rescue brotherhood, but in a place that is far off the map, trust is hard to come by and secrets can be murder. As the captain of Field County's ice rescue dive team, Callum Cook is driven to perfection, but when he meets new diver Lou Sparks, all that hard-won order is obliterated in an instant. Lou is a hurricane, a walking disaster, and with her, he's never felt more alive, even if keeping her safe may just kill him. Lou's new to the Rockies, intent on escaping her controlling ex, and she's determined to make it on her own terms, no matter how tempting Callum may be. But when a routine training exercise unearths a body, Lou and Callum find themselves thrust into a deadly game of cat and mouse with a killer who will stop at nothing to silence Lou and prove that not even her new search and rescue family can keep her safe forever. The next romantic suspense that's on my radar is Black Lace by Beverly Jenkins. The last thing that Lacey Green needs is trouble, and handsome Mayor Drake Randolph has danger written all over him, especially when his fineness accidentally runs her off the road. Despite Drake's sensuous charm, irresistible magnetism, and unwavering determination to make amends, she's thinking it might be smart to play it safe and keep her distance, if only his lips weren't so inviting. But trouble comes from a different source when Lacey, as the head of Detroit's Environmental Protection Department, launches an investigation into the activities of a ruthless developer. Suddenly, Lacey becomes a target, dragged down into a swamp of greed, corruption, and murder. Now Drake Randolph might be the only one in Motown who can keep Lacey alive. So I read a lot of historical romances by Beverly Jenkins, but I've never read any of her romantic suspense, so I'm very intrigued. I love all of her historicals, so I highly doubt I'm not going to like her romantic suspense. So those are some recommendations for romantic suspense and also some books that are on my radar. If you've read any of these books and want to talk about it, please comment below. Also, please comment of other tropes and genres you would like to see me recommend books from. Don't forget to like my video if you did, comment below and subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on all the social media platforms. The links will be in the description box below. See you next time, avid readers!